Look on your social media feeds. It's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's Krypton's Legacy, a Superman podcast, covering all of Clark Kent's greatest adventures in comics, film, and animation, with your hosts, Adam and Nick.
Welcome to another episode of Krypton's Legacy, a Superman podcast. As always, I'm your host, Adam, and with me, as always, my co-host, Nick. Nick, how's it going?
Adam, I'm doing super as always. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. It's always good to talk Superman with you, and that's what we're going to be doing today. Specifically, we're delving into the comic book history of the character, and what we decided to do was kind of look at some of the stories that were on James Gunn's recommended reading list. So as we go along, we're going to go through those. And because Nick hadn't read it yet, he's read it now, obviously for the show. Since Nick hadn't read this particular book yet, we decided to start with Birthright.
Yeah.
Superman Birthright, which was, of course, I want to say about 20 years ago now, which is ridiculous, but
I know.
that's how time moves. So we'll just go with it. As we usually do, if there's ever any news, we try and keep you up to date on it and share our thoughts. There isn't really much in the way of Superman, other than filming is ongoing. It's going well. James Gunn replied to a fan asking him how filming was going, and he said that yesterday was one of the best days yet. That's encouraging. You like to hear stuff like that. And the cast seems to be having fun as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like every time one of them, posts on social media, it seems like they're enjoying themselves. There's a lot of camaraderie within this group, it seems. And we even got some set pictures of the actors playing the engineer. Now, of course, we're not going to share them here because they're not official released images, so they won't be on the screen. But what's of note is that there was a costume that was also lined with those tracking dots for the CGI.
Mm-hmm.
And, some people were critical of, oh my God, is that the suit? And it's like, the actress playing the engineer isn't actually metallic. Ergo, they need to fill that in with CGI.
Well, we've never been through this before.
It's kind of hard to judge that, given that we're not looking at the full final thing, like the entity, which is the appearance of the character. So, I mean, thankfully, I think people are getting wiser, and there wasn't much of that stupidity going on, but some of it did exist. Of course, Superman was not photographed. I'm guessing most of his filming is being done indoors in studio right now. And that's why we haven't seen anything yet in terms of the full reveal.
Mm-hmm.
somebody asked James Gunn, well, why haven't we seen the full suit yet? To which James Gunn replied, because the film doesn't come out for over a year. Look, I want to see it. Nick wants to see it. Superman fans all over the world want to see it. But we'll get it in due time. Hopefully, it's an officially released image.
Yeah.
But we'll get it in due time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's just be happy for the moment that filming is ongoing and it seems to be, going smoothly. Which in the history of Superman productions hasn't always been the case. So,
Yeah, good point.
let's take the wins when we can get them. The other bit of news, Nick, and then I'll throw it over to you.
Mm-hmm.
You can call this news, but I discussed it with Donnie on the Emerald Echo Green Lantern podcast, which I don't know if that particular episode's out yet, so this may be your first time hearing this, but Nathan Fillion is in Atlanta.
Mm.
And his hair, while not in the traditional Guy Gardner formation or shape yet, is reddish, which is in line with Guy Gardner. So whether that means they're going to actually cut and saw his hair in that manner or put a wig on him remains to be seen. But his hair color is looking very Guy Gardner-ish. So, Nick, with all this somewhat news, but not really news happening, what's your take on all of it?
Yeah, I mean, first things first, let me just start off by saying that Nathan Fillion better indeed have the bowl cut.
Oh, I think that's, yeah.
With that sort of hairstyle, and Superman better punch him in the face in replacing Batman. I'm just throwing it out there. James, don't.
He's got to stick up for his boy Batman.
Don't mess this up, James. Come on, it's right there. But anyway, as you know, Adam, we have tons of discussions, off recording. I'm just elated and ecstatic that a day that we never thought we would. At some point we probably knew we would see it, but now it kind of feels real that a Superman movie is officially in production. It's being filmed. The cast seems enthusiastic about it. I'm just excited to be on this ride. I'm excited to see the suit. I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I probably do have it on good authority that I'm sure Warner Brothers has some kind of massive campaign for the suit reveal, kind of like how Matt Reeves did for Robert Pattinson as Batman. I'm hoping that's the route that they go, because I would really honestly hate if we kind of repeated deja vu here, where when we got like a less than enthusiastic look of the Superman costume, from a leaked set reveal, which is probably why they're saving all his scenes in due time. But like it's gonna come. It's gonna be amazing. And I'm glad that everything looks par for the course, and I'm just excited. I'm jazzed.
Yeah, and I just think with the excitement around the filming of the movie, the current comics, rereading Birthright, it's such a good time to be a Superman fan.
It's the best time.
I have made the strategic decision. Not that anybody cares about my choices of comic collecting, but for the sake of the habit of collecting, and also for the sake of space, because much to my chagrin, I don't. And we have some breaking news we'll get to in a second, but I don't live in Wayne Manor, so I don't have excess space. I wish I did, but so I've had to decide which books I'm going to collect physically and which are going to be strictly digital, because I love Batman and Superman so much. those are going to be the only titles that I collect physically.
Yeah.
And I think Birthright reinforced that decision.
Mm-hmm.
Rereading, I'm like, oh yeah, definitely I'm gonna stick with my boys, right? And look, I'm still gonna read and buy Power Rangers comics and Green Lantern and all the other things that Nick and I and Donnie and I and Chris and I and both Chris's and I, because there's two of them. I'm still gonna buy and read those books, but it's just I've made the decision just to stick with my boys, Batman and Superman, the world's finest. But yeah, but it's just such a great time to be a Superman fan. It's nice to see the core two super books both be really good. But we do have breaking news that you alerted me to, so I'll let you share it.
Yeah, so obviously before we get a new Superman movie next year, we do still have another season of Superman and Lois, which premieres on the CW. We obviously know, and we've talked about it before, that season 4 is going to be the last season of Superman and Lois, in which case filming is actually underway on that one. I believe they're actually almost done.
Right.
And Elizabeth Tulloch and Tyler Hoechlin have actually been very enthusiastic about filming the current season. In which case, Elizabeth Tulloch, usually like she usually does, if you follow her on Instagram, she's actually a great person to follow.
Yeah.
She's been sharing a lot of behind the scenes photos of her and Tyler, on the set. In which case, she usually likes to reply to a lot of fans, and she actually mentioned that Superman and Lois will most likely debut in the fall of this year, replying to a fan on Instagram. So
Right.
I would suspect the fall of this year is when Superman and Lois will debut its final season.
It's probably 10 episodes, right?
I want to say it's a truncated season. That sounds about right. Yeah, I'll say anywhere between 10 and 13.
And just to show some love, that's a great show.
Yes.
Um,
I can't wait to review that. Yeah.
yeah, we should definitely get on, especially the last season.
Yeah.
And we're definitely going to revisit the pilot as part of our lead up to Superman. It's Superman. I was going to say Legacy. Damn it, that's going to take a while. But it's a great show. Tyler's a fantastic Superman.
Yes.
But Bitsy Tulloch as Lois Lane is, in my opinion, one of the best Lois Lanes in live action, period. Whether it's TV or film. She's easily top 3.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to do the live ranking right now because I need to.
Yeah.
I want to see the full 4th season and then let it marinate, and then I'll revisit my list for both Superman and Lois, and maybe we'll do that on the show. We'll do a ranking, and a discussion on, because I had that here, but it was with somebody else that's no longer part of the network, and let's not bring them up because it's not worth it. They're in the Phantom Zone. Good for them. Do what you do. It is what it is. But anyway, so maybe we'll revisit that in a new, updated form with sane people that I actually like podcasting with. And so, but I'm not going to do that now. But she is in the top 3.
Yes.
And whenever she pulls or does an interview, her love of the character just shines through. And I think that's what I'm also seeing with Rachel Brosnahan. And so, knowing what Bitsy's given us and seeing that Rachel has a similar passion, to quote the cop in The Dark Knight Rises, "Boy, we're in for a show tonight." Well, in 2025, but they would have screwed up the quote. So I had to, but yeah, so I definitely looking forward to see how Superman and Lois wraps up. I know some fans are lamenting that it didn't go longer, but you can be a really good show and have only 4 seasons.
Yes.
And through 3 seasons, Superman and Lois is proving that. So let's hope they finish off strong and that Superman sticks to landing, which, given his prowess with flying, unless Kryptonite's involved, I have no doubt that he will. That's all the sort of kind of non-news, but it is news because we need to fill a segment that we have.
Yeah.
So, that's it. That's all we got, unless James Gunn drops something mid-episode.
Yeah.
Feel free, James. But what we'll do is we'll take a quick break. And on the other side, we'll go back 20 years and we'll talk Birthright. Sadly, when I come back, I'll still have the white in my goatee because can't fix that. But so I'll be back, and we'll take a trip back in time. Stay tuned.
What's up, everyone? It's the Emerald Enthusiast. For all of your multiverse viewing and listening needs, check out our shows, which include Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters, Power Rangers, the Marvel Universe, and the DC Universe, including the Emerald Echo podcast. You can check us out on Podbean, and remember to subscribe right here on YouTube. That's the Multiverse Musings Podcast Network. From the first podcast to the last.
And we're back. And as promised, we are looking at the graphic novel. Well, I mean, the 12 issues graphic novel, however you read it. We're looking at it. We're probably going to we're reviewing it as one big story. We're not going to go issue by issue because why? When the graphic novel exists, we'll just go through the whole story. But Birthright, it came out, I want to say 03, 04, if my memory serves correctly. And I remember it being a big deal because I was just getting my re-entry back at the comics. Back in the good old days when I collected 2 titles and it seemed like, hey, this is not an expensive hobby. And but anyway, my friend told me about this 12-issue series titled Birthright. And he told me what it was. And it was already 6 issues deep, so I'm like, I'll just wait for the trade. And I did. And one of the cool things that I liked about it, or I noticed at the time, was you could sense the influence that Smallville, the TV show, had on this book.
Yep.
And being right in the middle of, not in the middle, in the early stages of Smallville airing, that was pretty cool. Because that was my re-entry. Smallville was my re-entry into Superman. So now to have a comic that kind of, it wasn't exactly the same, but there were elements that were similar. I thought that was kind of cool. Then I come to find out, that Superman and Lex Luthor were also, Clark and Lex, I should say, were also friends and contemporaries in the Silver Age. Right? So it wasn't a thing exclusively to Smallville, which I found out, of course, later. But anyway, so it seemed like to me that Mark Waid was pulling, on different threads to create this story, to influence his story. And I think, if I remember correctly, I read this before I read the trades of the Man of Steel origin, the 86 origin. So this might have been my first exposure to what's the comic book origin of Superman? Like, what's that version? You having read it just yesterday,
I know,
for the sake of this podcast, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm actually ashamed of myself as being a Superman purist, as you know, and as our listeners know, that Birthright has always been on the docket. I just haven't gotten around to it. I'm deeply ashamed, but lo and behold, now having finished it, I think this is fantastic, and it's quintessential Superman. I think the of what you just said too. I think it is really fascinating that it served as a blueprint for not just Smallville, but you can see some influences that Man of Steel kind of pulled from as well. So obviously, like it's a comic that's stood the test of time. Obviously, it kind of takes some risks in the new storytelling, because it is a reimagining. So there's things like you said too, like Clark and Lex being friends is kind of an avenue in storytelling that I'm actually going to appreciate because I think it adds a new element kind of to both dynamics as well. So I personally dug uh, that kind of approach as well.
Yeah. I like that we get the way the story is structured. We get the briefest of looks at Krypton to start.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, so we get him, the ship is sort of, being sent out. Like we're right at the destruction point um, with it. And then we get brief sort of um, 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 snippets of Krypton through Lex's shenanigans, but also um, um, Clark having that tablet, that alien, tablet device that he sees. Um, so um, I like the way that was structured. Instead of blow by blow, hey, here's Krypton, and here's how things happen. I like that we were put in the position of Clark Kent, which was nice. I like that. What do you think of that? How that was structured?
Yeah, I think having like that first person view of it, kind of like it makes the destruction of Krypton feel a little more personal and intimate. Granted, this is a reimagining, a retelling of the origin of Clark Kent. And as we've kind of seen in most recent origins, Clark Kent kind of discovers who he is through, third party, elements like that, like having a tablet that has the history of Krypton on it, or albeit somebody explaining to him what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Be it on Smallville, with Christopher Reeve's cameo, kind of explaining what happened to Krypton. So, I'm kind of I thought the approach was pretty well done. I mean, granted, the explosion of Krypton is kind of something that we've kind of seen probably more times than we probably have liked. So I always dig that this new approach to it, and I think that especially Clark's journey throughout Birthright, I think it comes full circle by the end as well.
Yeah. The other thing that I think is interesting to me is really I really liked the Lex portrayal here,
Mm.
and how there's a clear balance of um, like the quote unquote mad scientist, if you will, um, and the the businessman. Like the balance between the two, I thought was very um, well handled. Um, Especially like you see as a child is where you see his aptitude, like how he is ahead of everybody else in terms of intelligence. And it's the fact that he knows that he's smarter than everybody else that makes people despise him just because of his air of confidence and his attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And watching him, um, sort of like there's that scene where he's in class and he's basically airing out everybody's like secrets and dirty laundry.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course they all resent him and despise him for it. And so you see that side of Lex, but then you also see the side that can open up a bit to Clark. You know, I like that, and also, so what did you think of how that friendship was portrayed? Because it was a lot different than than um, um, than what we saw in Smallville.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found it to be quite relatable, actually, in a sense too, because I think obviously, if we really think about it, it makes perfect sense why Clark and Lex would almost be friends at that sort of age, because they're polar opposites, and usually sometimes, polar opposites attract, right? Like
Yeah,
like obviously you have two kind of outsiders, like Clark being kind of like an outcast, per se. He kind of feels like he has these secret abilities, so nobody's gonna really like him or relate to him. He's kind of all to himself. And then here's Lex, a genius in disguise here, who kind of probably uses um outside methods such as revealing people's secrets and kind of seeking attention, maybe wanting to be like the class clown, kind of things like that too. Like it's a very relatable thing, to have like sort of attention seekers, and then you have somebody that kind of like feels bad for you, so then they kind of choose to kind of like be your friend, and then because that's usually how stuff like that happens. You always kind of gain a friend in the most unlikeliest of situations, or who's somebody that you might not think be your best friend turns out to be one of your best friends. So I think that it was a fascinating approach to have that sort of dynamic between Clark and Lex at the forefront, because kind of like Smallville was, is that um, Lex and Clark were friends until Lex felt that Clark wasn't being his friend anymore, and then that kind of drift started to happen. Where this was clearly like Lex always kind of had these sort of darker intentions from the get go. And it was like, Clark was at a certain point when you're in high school, you kind of do your own thing. And then that's kind of like how friendships drift away like that.
now, of course, one of the things we see from Lex's childhood that will influence the later part of the plot
Yes.
is his experiment with the meteor rock, which is kryptonite, um, 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 and also discovering um, this ability to peer into Krypton's past. And what causes him and Clark to drift is that because he's using kryptonite, when Clark goes to visit him, Clark has the reaction where he starts getting sick,
Mm-hmm.
and Lex views that as um, Clark thinking he's like weird or strange, and so Lex throws him out. and basically flat out says, after today, I'll never even think of Smallville ever again. And but what did you think of two things? Did you buy the way they set up Lex's intelligence a bit earlier? Did you buy the fact that he could create a technology that could allow him to see into Krypton's past and even eventually later on communicate with them? And what did you think of that scenario being the fracture within the Clark Kent Lex friendship?
Mm-hmm. That's a very interesting question because again they do set up that Lex is like this secret mad genius, and usually that obviously it's the consumption of technology that can consume one and that can change their sort of whole dynamic, the way that they look at life, the way that they look at people, because obviously when you get power, or the thought of having power, it obviously the idea that you can have more, and then when you have more power, that kind of puts this mentality that you can be like this mad titan, per se, might you will. So here's Clark, who's kind of like his friend, who's trying to send him on the straight and narrow, or in this case, keep him on the straight and narrow. Kind of doesn't, sort of agree with that, because Clark's a good natured person by heart. Whereas, Lex has always kind of been consumed by that thought of having equilibrium, might you add. So, is it kind of an out there? Is it, could I have seen that? I mean, kind of like I said, polar opposites kind of attract in a way too. So I wouldn't say that I was surprised that Lex might have always had these sort of thoughts, maybe when he was at a young age, because usually when you are at a young age is usually when you kind of start to discover some sort of purpose for yourself, whether that's good or bad, hopefully it's always good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I would say that I wouldn't say that it's a far out there approach, because, Clark's always been looking for who he is, versus Lex kind of, in a way, kind of always assumed who he was always meant to be,
Yeah.
I would say.
Um, I agree with that. I thought it was if you're trying to sell me on Lex being this, the smartest guy in the room,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
then yeah, I could believe that. Especially the way, again, we went back and forth with Lex. So we saw the adult Lex, and then we got to peer into the child Lex. And
Mm-hmm.
in doing it that way, it gives you the super intelligent Lex, and then shows you the back history of that. It made it so that I could go along with that discovery, that he made that invention and that discovery. So I like that whole relationship. We'll get back to Lex and his master plan in a little bit, but so while we don't get a linear origin in the traditional sense for Krypton, and it goes from Krypton to Smallville to Metropolis,
Mm-hmm.
what we do get is the early days, the origin of Clark Kent, the Clark Kent persona, and his time as a reporter at the Daily Planet. One of the things I really, really liked with this was when he's going through crafting, when he makes the decision, hey, I want to help out, I want to, basically to be Superman, even though he doesn't know what that is yet. His mom and dad, Mom and Pa Kent, sort of, more specifically, Martha, suggests that to hide his true identity from his co-workers and the rest of Metropolis, she's the one who encourages the persona, the Clark Kent persona, and encourages him to study acting to kind of pull that off. And I like that little anecdote. I thought it was ingenious. And even the fact that, the glasses dull people's perception, like, of his eyes, like the color of his eyes, right? Like, those little small details make the biggest of differences, I thought. And so that when Clark Kent is bumbling around, you realize that that's all an act. And he's done that because he studied acting. Like, he's able to do that because he studied acting. So it's not just, like, there's a method to the madness that is that identity. It's not just, well, I'm going to put on a pair of glasses and hope like hell nobody figures it out. What did you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so the Clark Kent earlier, like the origin of Clark Kent in this book is probably one of my favorite parts, just in general. Like, I love that we started off.
Yeah.
Obviously, like, I want to like set up what you just said, because I completely agree 1000%. The part where Clark Kent's in Africa was one of my favorite parts of this whole book, when he's learning the meaning of being a hero and learning the meaning of what it actually means to be a good person and to want to help people. Because I thought it was fantastic, because he's not even in a suit, and he's around, lifting barricades and saving people from fires, and blah 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 blah. And he's talking to people kind of just as Clark Kent, and he makes that decision that, well, I can't be here because now that I have these abilities, I can put you all at risk. So again, it's like, it's setting up that Clark Kent at his core is just that nice, wonderful person that just wants to do the right thing. And sometimes doing the right thing is the hardest thing to do. So I kind of love that. And then when he gets to Smallville, I mean, my God, brother, just beautiful stuff all around. I mean, we've talked about this off air. I've said it multiple times. I mean, this is why the Kent should be alive for Clark Kent, even when he's Superman. I mean, but Clark and Martha having the idea of making the suit, getting the idea, playing around with different costumes, I thought was beautiful. And my goodness, somebody finally having the idea of the secret identity trope. I mean, I thought it was utterly amazing that Martha was like, you should take acting classes so you can learn to kind of disguise, a different tone in your voice, fix your walk a little bit, like, if you're going to play the part, then you got to play the part. So this idea of, you can't just put on glasses and assume nobody's going to recognize that you're Superman when you have the same color hair and you have the same kind of height and, you have the same kind of muscle structure. So, you got to be willing to play the part. Yeah. So I thought that was just a fantastic piece of writing like that, to show that, why don't you take some acting classes so you can kind of learn the role a little bit. I thought that was amazing.
I even like the fact that he was a reporter, like you said, in Africa. So he has some experience when he gets to the Daily Planet. It's not just, hey, I wrote for my high school paper, give me a job. As much as I love Smallville, that's ridiculous.
I have this internship in high school.
Yeah. I worked for some weird girl that ended up joining a cult. And anyway, so I like the fact that he had some experience with journalism.
Mm-hmm.
And I also liked that, when we get to the whole interview process leading up to that, right? We get a little scene of him in the cab where you see there's these military drones surveying the city to make sure, to ward off potential terrorist attacks and things like that. So, clearly this was written in a post 9/11 world.
Mm-hmm.
Like just recently off the heels of that, back in the day. But in looking at that some may think it dates the book, But the fact that that's still an issue that, as a society, we have to be worried about. Like, it's still prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and even later on in the book, when Superman stops a school shooting, I mean, that hasn't gone away, unfortunately, in the 20 some odd years since this book. So these issues are very topical, and again, it puts Superman in a real world context. But what it doesn't do is take away the core of what Superman is. That's what Mark Waid, with those brief scenes, he's like, look, I can put him in the darker scenario. I can put him in the modern world. But look, shine a light against this character, and it's still the character we know and love.
Mm-hmm.
That's endured, 80 plus years. I really liked the whole interview process with Perry was right out of like Superman 78, which that's, Mark Waid is a super fan of that.
Mm-hmm.
And even you see the way like Lois's, early treatment of Clark Kent kind of mirrors Margot Kidder's, Christopher Reeve.
Mm-hmm.
So you see a lot of that. So I like those scenes. Those were nice callbacks to to the movie. And then I think it was Superman's first reveal where the drones attack, right? Because Lex is pulling the strings to get the military contract, which is kind of like almost very similar out of Superman the Animated Series. But Superman Lois takes Jimmy into the helicopter to kind of follow the story and get a first-hand look and get some good pictures. And then the helicopter comes in contact with the drones and sort of so Jimmy starts falling out of the helicopter. The helicopter starts going down, and then there's this big splash page of Superman saving both Jimmy and the helicopter. And the art is by Lionel Yu. I gotta say, I know that Superman, the upcoming movie, isn't going to be a origin per se in the strictest sense, but I really hope we get a recreation of that scene.
That's a poster right there.
Like that would be an incredible first save for the movie, because twofold. Obviously, it will be a nice homage to Superman 78, but it'll be done in a different way because yes, he's saving Lois and the helicopter, but he's also saving Jimmy,
right?
Which adds a new wrinkle. He's saving two people and an object. So imagine what that is like. But what did you think of that scene? Did you?
Yeah, I mean, dude, honestly, that was my favorite panel of the book going into it until we got something like later on that I think came in like issue 10.
Yeah, which
we'll talk about. Just because it's exactly who Superman is, and I thought that it was brilliant to have kind of Jimmy Olsen be the save for Superman this time, because we all know Lois Lane's gonna fall in love with Superman. We know they have their interview. We know Lois and Superman have that relationship, but I mean, Superman's pal. I mean, man. I mean, where do you think something like that comes from? Gets his life saved by Superman. So, like, I love that they kind of set that up right off the bat, and kind of like something to allude what you said too. This is why this book is so great, because it illustrates that it's not that you can't put these darker topical subjects in a Superman story. It's that Superman has to be bright and hopeful in that dark and cynical world. So again, this is why this book just gets everything right about Superman in my mind. You know, that suit is bright, it's hopeful. Superman is who Superman should be, and he's doing Superman things. It's beautiful. But yeah, no, that splash page of Superman saving the day, that first reveal, I don't think could have been done any better, to be honest.
So, and the cool thing about that is Superman's big rescue leads to, because he sees that Lex was behind it all, right?
Yeah.
He follows the evidence of it, and so he confronts Lex in the office,
So good.
which had a mix of Superman the animated series and the Lois and Clark pilot, which was great.
James.
Yeah, yeah, and the fact that the media comes in and bursts into the office and Lex tries to make a big scene of, oh, any friend of Metropolis is a friend of mine, and tries to shake his hand, and Superman just looks at him like don't touch me, you sick freak. That insults Lex to the point that sets him off
Mm-hmm.
on. Now my whole plot is to discredit this guy and take him out and show and simultaneously make myself look like the hero to the city. Like that one look by Superman sets everything else off. And I really thought that Lex's whole scheme to make Superman look like the scout for an invading army was ingenious.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to the point where he creates, Lex creates damage to a bridge in Metropolis. Superman goes to um, save the people on the bridge, but because kryptonite is in the area, Superman gets weak, and it actually looks like he's tearing, as he's falling, it looks like he's tearing the bridge apart. And then how Lex uses the holographic imagery
Mm-hmm.
from the device that he created that can peer into Krypton's past to create this full, Kryptonian army, which is 2/3, like hologram and 1/3 actors in costumes.
Yeah.
Like it's ingenious. Like and like it's like that's Lex Luthor. And yeah, he's a mad scientist. Like he's insane. Like he creates that machine. He's insane, but he's also cold, calculated, manipulative. He's not twitchy, sounding like the Riddler, looking like the Riddler. Like it's like I get what a certain thing was trying to do. They failed miserably, but this is how you do it. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is how you. That's what I said. The balance of Lex Luthor between businessman and scientist was great. In fact, the LexCorp business, all the businesses were basically a funnel towards his scientific endeavors, if you think
Mm-hmm.
about it. But that plan was ingenious, but so it's so good, in fact, that Superman has to rely on both his parents, because he asks Martha and Jonathan to cross-reference the imagery from the Kryptonian tablet with what Lex is showing. And also, he has to rely on Lois to help him get the piece of kryptonite to sort of disable Lex's holograms and sort of expose the ruse. So he needs, and of course, because kryptonite is being dispersed into the airwaves, he needs other people's help to stop Lex.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that, not because I'm one of those guys that think, "Oh, Superman's too overpowered to be relatable," because I don't think that. But I like that because it just reinforces that this is an early day Superman that doesn't have all the answers, so he has to rely on other people. Um, and I love that. He proved Lex wrong because he said. Lex said, the people will never get behind you. They'll always think you're a monster. And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'll win them over one by one if I have to. And you see that he did when Superman's getting the crap beat out of him because, again, Kryptonite's present. And the citizens of Metropolis that are surrounding him actually stand up to the Kryptonian leader in support of Superman. I thought that was great.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was so well executed. And again, the build to that was so well done because in the span of 12 issues, you see Superman's first appearance. The people are enamored by what he's able to do. Then Lex starts to discredit him, so his reputation goes down, and then it builds back up again. It's almost like each portion got 4-issue segments to play itself out, and it was so well timed and well crafted. I just thought it was expertly done. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that kind of whole battle to me kind of had some like Spider-Man 2 vibes to it, like the Sam Raimi movies, where
Yeah,
when the kind of city of New York is kind of like trying to help Spider-Man against the Green Goblin in the first movie by like standing up to the villain, throwing rocks at him when Spider-Man's kind of down and out, and
yeah,
then Spider-Man 2, you got one kind of Spider-Man needs saving by the people of New York when after he's kind of saved them from the train sequence.
yeah,
So again, there's like some kind of similar parallels that I thought were great. And kind of like you, I thought it was a brilliant usage of Lex Luthor, kind of this first battle introduction. Might you add kind of Lex's ability to mentally tear down Superman by not only having these holographic images from his home planet that he never got to know, but in fact that he's using the crest of Superman against him, and he's using what that symbol stands for as a as a means to discredit what that symbol means to other people. So then here's Superman, and all Superman's doing is saving people, and then it's beautiful because that's what's getting people on board. That hey, this guy isn't our enemy. He's trying to help us. He's trying to save us. So I thought everything was kind of like playing along, just beautiful, and then even like the way that it all ends when Superman finally gets to see his parents
yeah.
through
Well,
the
well,
holographic images.
well, let's talk a little bit about that because
Yeah, that was
if you
amazing.
didn't hate Lex already at this point in the book,
Oh man,
you'll hate him for the fact that he takes pleasure in revealing to Superman that you're from a planet called Krypton and
your parents are not
your
are
parents
gone.
and the whole planet is dead.
Oh
And
man,
he's like literally laughing at Superman to the point of taking out his phone and taking a selfie to say, look at this guy's reaction. Um, but once Superman,
makes it.
foils Lex's plan and takes down the fake Kryptonians and sends Lex off to jail, Lex had managed to be able to communicate through a wormhole of, I mean, it's all sci-fi mumbo jumbo, but
Yeah,
the point is that I can't explain. At this point, just roll with it. I mean, it is what it is.
it's comics.
Certain things you got to let go,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things. But so Lex is able to concoct a way to communicate through his technology with the Kryptonians, and Superman is watching the moment where Jor-El and Lara place him in the rocket ship to send him away, and he says, "Oh, that's that's where I'm. That's me. That's my parents. Whatever." And there's a a quote from Jor-El and Lara where they're like, I wonder if he's going to make it. And Superman's able to get the message across. It's me, I'm your son, and I made it. That was one of the first time I read it, and every time since, and I've read this book a couple of times, that is so emotional and heartwarming. It really is a beautiful scene because there is some closure to that in the sense that they know what they did worked, and Superman got to very briefly interact with his biological parents. Unfortunately, we never got follow-up stories to sort of because DC went through this very weird period where okay, Birthright is the canon origin, and then it's not, and so
yeah,
we were not. So we never really got stories that came directly after. So would this Superman have a fortress and have a projection of Jor-El that he gets to talk to and blah blah blah, or was that it? Because in my mind, if that was it, that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
If all he has left is the tablet, the super tablet that explains, okay, this is this, this is that, this is this, and it gives him everything he needs to know, but he doesn't get to talk to Jor-El and Lara after that, I'm fine with it. Because it was such a beautiful moment. What did you think? Was that the page that you were talking about?
No, that was the page. I think it was the issue 10 cover where Superman's kind of in the shadows and he kind of like sees somebody. It's like Clark. He has like the shirt whip like in the shadows, and you can see like the background of Superman's head. I thought that was like kind of like it's kind of like feels like Batman in a way.
Yeah.
Because kind of like represents Superman's always around.
Yeah.
Sort of thing too. I thought that like just the aesthetic of that I thought looked awesome. But yeah, I mean like just like to go back to your point. I mean yeah, I mean like in like also to your credit too, there is no Fortress of Solitude in this book at all either. So if this is all that we get too, I mean that's a pretty beautiful way to have Clark kind of meet his parents. If that's the only first and last time abide through like that tablet that he can obviously have at his disposal at any time. But I just thought that it was beautiful too because I mean, for anybody that's lost parents, and wants your parents to know that you've made it and that they want you to be proud of you. I can promise you that his parents felt that every bit as Clark did. So I thought that it was a beautiful thing just to have, just to like have like a feel human emotion too when you're reading that too because I think that's the power and the beauty of comics sometimes too is that you can feel a sense of relief in that too that you spent through this whole 12 issues with this character and he never got to know his heritage and here's his parents right in front of him that he finds out aren't alive anymore. All he wants to do is let his parents know that he's okay. I thought that it was beautiful. So that's top tier writing. That's top tier level writing right there.
Did you notice that in the big battle sequences, one of the Kryptonian ships or weaponry looked like a giant spider?
Yeah.
I think that was Mark Waid kind of poking fun at
the Nicolas Cage.
Peters.
The John Peters one. Yeah. That's great though.
Because when I saw that for the first time, I started laughing. I couldn't stop laughing.
Yeah. That's great though.
and there's other scene there's the scene where Clark is contemplating leaving, and he's in the air and he sees that Vanguard, whatever the hell the fake Kryptonian guy's name is, has burned the S logo into the ground.
Oof.
And he's like hell, and he just flies down, like the glasses drop, and he just flies forward. Mm-hmm. I mean, if we get, I want an image like that from in the movie. I love that.
Yeah.
When he rescues Lois at the last second, when Lex pushes her.
Mm-hmm. It's like Superman the movie, yeah.
I mean, actually, I got to give you credit. Rare times that I do, but BVS kind of did that. kind of took that shot from
Yeah.
the book. So kudos to
them.
them.
They did.
The
Doomsday Bat.
Yeah, and so the Man of Steel also did the flying with the zebras, except Superman was in costume at that point. I'd still like to see it where he's not in costume and it's just Clark. I think it can still be done. Like if you could do the literal translation, and I don't think a certain crowd will say James Gunn's copying, but who cares what they think?
Everybody copies from somebody. I got news for people. Nothing's original.
Yeah, it could be done in a way where it feels fresh and new.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of visual imagery that I still think that they could take from this, even though it's not going to be a straight up adaptation. One of the things that was controversial back in the day, and I want to get your thought on it. What do you make of Superman being not eating meat because of the fact that his vision allows him to see the quote unquote soul or essence of a being, and so when he seeing that essence like leave the body when a creature or a person dies, that's why he chooses not to eat. I mean, like, did that bother you to the point of, because that was a big deal back when this was coming out. Like, people were so bothered by it.
I mean, here's the only thing that I can think of is, and there's nothing wrong, I guess, too, with feeling that way. Just because if you look at the archetype that we've kind of like grown to sort of known and appreciate and love, you look at somebody like a Wolverine, like a Logan.
Yeah.
That sort of like, Batman's always big and bulky, so somebody like that probably eats meat, right? Because somebody, he works out, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's that sort of archetype is something that we've kind of grown like in our pop culture realm to kind of sort of be accustomed to, so this idea that Superman could be like a vegetarian, and sort of like that sort of like way of life, because it is a way of life, to be a vegetarian.
Yeah.
I can't, it's one of those, like, I guess when you're reading at the time, maybe it kind of makes you feel a certain type of way, but I think when you're reading it now, it's kind of just like, there's so many more people that choose to be vegetarians and things like that and have different ways that they approach life. Me personally, because as somebody that's read it today, I can't attest to reading it obviously like when it came out, because I was younger at the time. In general, but it didn't affect me one way or the other. If you wanna play with different avenues like that, as long as he's Superman, as long as he's the character that I know and love on the page, that's the only thing I care about.
Personally, what Superman eats or doesn't eat doesn't influence me. It didn't back when I read it. I'm like, listen, as long as they have him eating pie, like his mom's apple pie, not the Rock's iteration of pie, though. I mean, Lois probably. Anyway, that's a different podcast.
Yeah.
I'm talking about apple pie, damn it. As long as he eats the apple pie,
all pie is good pie, baby.
Oh, pie is fantastic. That's neither here nor there. I can attest to that having him all. Anyway, but yeah, I don't care what he eats, what he doesn't eat.
Yeah.
I thought the fact that he could see a living being's soul with his vision, I thought that was smart in the sense that
I thought it was cool.
If there's a motivation for Superman not to kill, that would be it.
Right. Which is probably what it was in a deeper, with a deeper meaning. I would suppose.
Right. But again, like I said, just to reiterate, from my point of view back then, and rereading it now, I could care less what Superman eats.
Yeah.
Does he even need to eat? Is the question, because of his physiology.
Right.
Like, literally, does he need to eat to survive? I don't think he does. All he has to do is go up in the sun and do this.
Yeah. So I don't think it's like Flash that needs to constantly intake a certain amount of sugar, because
so what
his body
he eats,
needs it.
I really don't care. Like in the grand scheme of people getting pissed off at stupid stuff, back then let's be honest, that's some stupid stuff to get up in arms over.
Yeah.
It's not that drastic of a change. Like, how often do we see scenes at a dinner table with Superman eating a steak? I don't remember. I can go comb through 20 years of Superman books. If I see it twice, I'll be shocked. So I didn't care. It wasn't a big deal for me. But is there anything that we haven't covered that you think we should mention?
No, I think we covered all the bases. I just think that I'm glad that I finally got around to this. I mean, like I said in the beginning, I kind of feel ashamed that I waited up until this point to get to it. But Adam, I'm gonna let you know right here. I'm gonna let our listeners know right now. I love this book so much that I am actually gonna go and buy the trade
Right.
for this book. I did read this digitally, just because it was at a more easier disposal for me at the moment. But I am gonna go and pick up this trade just so I can, as a Superman purist, I can say that I own this. With the other collection.
It is, for me. See, I like a lot of the Superman origins. So for me, it's tough. Like, I like the Man of Steel origin from the 80s.
Yeah.
Certain aspects really hit with that. Like, there's certain aspects of the character, like the way they handle Clark overall. Like, I really like, because my first live action exposure to Superman was Lois and Clark.
Yeah.
And the iteration of Clark they took was kind of from that. Like, the way Clark behaved was from that. But as an overall piece, I think Birthright might be my favorite origin story for Superman.
Hard to argue with that. It does everything right. I mean, as far as what I can tell, there wasn't really anything in this book that I didn't really, roll my eyes over. So, yeah.
So with that, let's give it a grade. So remember, 5 for story and 5 for art. What would you?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep this one short and sweet because I love this quite a bit. I'm giving this all 5 across the board. So 5 for story and 5 for art.
Yeah, for me it's the same. It's a 5 for story and art. It's a fantastic read.
Yeah,
Again,
that suit looked impeccable. That suit is impeccable.
Yeah, it's classic as classic can get, and it still looks great. Um, I don't know how much of this is going to influence James Gunn's Superman movie. I know it was on the list of, in the DC put out, like, to prepare yourself for the DCU, for the movies that have been announced. Here's what to read. So I know it was on there, but how much of it actually influences the movie remains to be seen. But anything you're pulling from this book, I think, puts you in good footing, because I think it's great. And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend going to pick it up either digitally or physically. And it's great. And I'm glad that we got to look through it and give our thoughts on it. And we'll have plenty more books to go through in the lead up to the Superman movie hitting our screens in 2025. But until our next book review episode episode regarding Superman, you can chat with Nick or I on social media. Nick, where do they track you down?
Yeah, thank you so much again, Adam. Always a blast. You guys can follow me on Twitter and Letterboxd at Nick Zennick, and you guys can go follow the other show that I co-host. That is at Vigilante 1939. It's a DC, Marvel, Star Wars leaning pop culture show. Just go on Apple Podcasts, anywhere you find you listen to podcasts, and you'll find the show. Thank you so much.
Awesome. If you want to find me, it's at Adam_LeafSfan on Twitter. We do have a Facebook page, which there will be a link for in the description below. Click that, I will add you, and we can continue the conversation there. But remember, Superman Birthright is forever. From the first time he rescues Lois Lane from falling out of the sky to the last. So long, everybody.